morning again. It's so good to be together in this space again after a week of surviving Snowmageddon, our first one of 2026. Missed you guys so much last week, but it's so good to be back. And today I actually have the privilege of launching us into our first sermon series of 2026, and it's called Open House. And so for the next couple weeks, we'll be journeying through and learning together about a concept that is so near and dear to my heart. It's the concept of biblical hospitality. Biblical hospitality. But when I say the word hospitality, I know we have mixed feelings across the room, right? Some of you are all about this, but some of you are already wanting to tune me out a little bit because maybe the term hosting or hospitality for some of us immediately conjures up images of like Martha Stewart level tablescapes, right? Or Gordon Ramsay style gourmet dinners served to a room full of really well-dressed guests. And while some of us might come alive at the idea of assembling a 3-color balloon arch, or creating a Pinterest-worthy centerpiece, or baking all day to feed a crowd with homemade treats, if we look at Scripture, and especially at the life of Jesus, we begin to see that being a person of true biblical hospitality goes far beyond the surface. It's more than entertaining. It's more than offering creature comforts. True hospitality actually has way less to do with having an immaculate, spacious home with lots of room for seating and way more to do with the posture of our hearts. It has much less to do with pristine decorations. Biblical hospitality is much more concerned with creating spaces which invite the opportunity for real and life-giving relationships to unfold and to take place. So today, I would love for you to turn with me all the way back to the very beginning. We're going to dive into Genesis chapter 1, which we got a little foretaste of this with that beautiful song that took us all through the creation story. But Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to take a look at the creation story, our origin story. And in doing so, I'm hoping we'll get a glimpse at the radical hospitality that our God has offered to us. So we're going to start in Genesis 1, verse 1, super easy, right at the top. Here we go. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning on the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. And God called the dry ground land, and gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Okay, we're going to move down to verse 26 in Genesis now. We're going to fast forward a little bit to verse 26. So God creates a few more beautiful things in nature, and then we get to this part. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw that all he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so I need to tell you guys about this really fun experience our family had. A couple of weeks ago, my son Dean, who is a kindergartner, he's 5 years old, he checked off a major milestone in his sweet little life so far. On Friday night, a couple weeks ago, in the middle of January, Dean hosted his first play date with his friend from school, okay? And a little backstory, Dean has been asking over and over for a few months now if we would arrange for this particular classmate, and he's on his basketball teammate too, to come and play at our house. And so I reached out and I talked to his friend's mom, and an opportunity presented itself for us to have Rustin over while his parents went to a concert. So he was going to come over from 6 to 10 p.m. while his parents were on date night. So now Dean was really excited for many reasons. One, his friend finally got to come over, but now he got to stay up really late with his friend coming over, like a couple hours past his bedtime. But he was also excited that we got to host Rustin, this is his friend's name, for dinner. And so after much conversation of what we should serve Rustin for dinner, we decided on make your own pizza night. So Rustin could have whatever he wanted and wouldn't have to worry about eating anything unusual or something that would be off-putting for him. And so we then went to some links to make the shopping list, figured out with Rustin what toppings he liked on his pizza, and we got them at the grocery store. It turns out Rustin really likes bacon. So the next task on our list was to prepare the space for the evening. So I asked Dean, what do you want to do with Rustin? We've got 4 hours. What do you want to do with Rustin? And he was really excited about playing with his Ninja Turtle cars, or his Ninja Turtle toys, and his Hot Wheel cars, like these two big groups of things. And so I said that sounded good, but the problem was Dean's Hot Wheels and his Ninja Turtles were currently like scattered all across the room in chaotic fashion after weeks of like playing with them, but not putting them back where they go. So in short form, his room was an absolute mess, okay? And so it was actually a good opportunity for me to explain to him that in order for him to be able to play well and enjoy his toys with Rustin, we needed to clean his room. We needed to bring some order to the chaos. We needed Ninja Turtles in one place and Hot Wheels cars in the other. And maybe we could line up the different Hot Wheels tracks so we could have more than one going at a time. The invitation to Rustin had been extended, but in order for them to have a good night, we had some things that we had to take care of first. So we put his Hot Wheels back in their bucket and we gathered up the Ninja Turtles and we talked about the plan, and we got it in place, and we set aside a time to clean and organize his room. And I actually have a picture. He finally made it over, and they played Jedis for a long time, which wasn't on the list, but thankfully we had those lightsabers, and then that's a picture of us eating make your own pizza. So it was a fun night. But I think it's a pretty powerful thing that in this moment, if we move back to the text in this first part of Genesis that we're encountering and reading about God. It's the first moments that we're introduced to him in this wonderful book that we find out all about his character, that the God of the universe sets the stage so intentionally for relationship with us. A lot of times when we think about creation, we think about a God who brought something out of nothing. You read this verse, Genesis 1:2. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. And while that is a big part of the creation story, God bringing all this beauty that we see around us from the void, it's important for us to understand that in the ancient Near Eastern world that would have been reading this text for the first time, water and darkness, they actually represented chaos. Okay, the critical piece this verse is conveying is that the state of things prior to God's creative action was uninhabitable to human existence. Because you and me, last time I checked, we're land dwellers, right? The ocean, to the first readers and writers in Genesis, represented deep mystery and a place that was hostile and unpredictable. And in Genesis chapter 1, the first place we encounter God in this incredible text is that God, through the power of his Spirit, through his breath, brings order to the chaos. He creates a space for life to flourish and be possible for us. God makes a vault between the primordial waters so that land can emerge. He places boundaries around time and light and darkness itself to create rhythm in day and night in which we can live and work and rest and thrive. God enters into that which is formless and gives shape to the world as we know it. And then He invites us into relationship with him. So I may have shared this with you guys before, but something I've really learned to pay attention to over the years as I read scripture closely is I like to follow the verbs. And in this passage, there sure is a lot of action, right? 5 times in this chapter of Genesis, the text uses this remarkable verb, create. It also uses the word make. And I think we can infer through the 6 different times that God looks at creation, at what he's made, and says, this is good stuff, that perhaps another key concept at work in the story is that God delights in us and the good things he's making out of nothing. But the word most often used to describe how God brings the world to life in Genesis, do you know what the verb is? It's the word used constantly is God speaks. A version of the verb speak is used 14 times in this first chapter of Genesis alone. Author and Old Testament commentator Walter Brueggemann puts it like this: by God's speech, that which did not exist comes into being. God speaks something new that never was before. This sovereign speech is not coercive, but evocative. It invites, but does not compel. It hopes rather than requires. In Romans, the Apostle Paul talks about this too. He says, God, who gives life to the dead and calls into existence the things that do not exist. But the point I want to make sure none of us miss today is this: our God, who creates and makes and invites and delights and speaks goodness over all of it, he made us in his image, which means we have the capacity to do these things too. No, we can't separate the seas or create a galaxy from scratch, but you and me, we are formed with the ability to make something beautiful from what's in front of us. We have been invited by God to take the gifts he's given us in creation and steward them, to craft them, to open ourselves up to one another in the same way that God opened his mouth and spoke into being, inviting us to walk through life connected to God and each other. You might not have all of creation at your disposal. I know I don't. But what's in front of you that you can offer up in a posture of welcome to others? How can we arrange our time, our resources, our homes, our church, our hearts to mirror the hospitality of a God who shaped the very fabric of the universe with us in mind? How can we use the words that we speak not to compete or condemn or condescend, but instead to communicate care for our neighbors and enemies alike, to create space for understanding, even in disagreement, for unity in the midst of ideological differences, to speak life in a world filled with death and darkness? If you look at Genesis 1, the hospitality of God is on full display in this creation story. And the very nature of it, I think, invites us to ponder how we, who are made in God's image, can be co-creators with him in our world, filling in the empty voids and the chaotic spaces with kindness and intentionality. And perhaps most of all, invitation. That through us, those who have yet to understand this gift of grace offered to us in Christ may come to know it and receive it and feel God's love for them too. Okay, but practically, how do we do this, right? Because we're not going to create a whole universe. And what does it look like to create space for others in really tangible ways? And so Pastor Brady and I thought it might be cool to dive into the specifics of this Q&A style and brainstorm together how we might connect the dots between what might feel like a really lofty concept and tie it to real tangible ways that we can live out biblical hospitality in our world.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that you're opening up this series because you are like the hospitality queen, right? Has anybody benefited from Pastor Bethany's hospitality?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That's so kind.
I think the first question I have is I'm listening to you talk about hospitality and even how God created out of the chaos or out of the void is why. God didn't need to create us. God didn't need to do it with such intentionality. And oftentimes when I'm hearing a message like this on hospitality and really kind of stepping into this new area, I oftentimes think to myself, maybe you are too, oh, that's great. That sounds nice. That's for some people, but not in this season of life. I don't have time right now. That's just not priority. That's not my personality, right? Anybody guilty of maybe going there? So the question is, why did God create, and what does that speak to us about our role in creating spaces as well.
Yeah, well, I think one thing, and you mentioned it last week in your sermon, so you were just teeing us up, but you talked about how God is Father, Son, and Spirit. God in his very nature is relationship and is community and is almost this cooperation between the Father and the Son and the Spirit, even in this story to create. And so I love this concept of God is in relationship with God's self, and then God creates this whole world so that he can be in relationship with us. Like it's in God's nature to create and to invite us into a relationship. And then we have this moment where we skip down and he creates a space for humans, but then he creates us, and then he creates a friend, right? He not only creates a space for us, but he creates someone to be a companion. And so there's just this sense that like life is meant to be shared, and who God is, he's unable to not be that way.
Yeah. If you just look at who the nature of God is in creation, you see that relationship is above all else. Like there's no questions about that in all of Scripture. So whatever we're going through as we organize our time and our week and our money and everything, there should be this reprioritization, relationship, and then all else. And I think you get that from the creation story, and you definitely get it from God, just the nature of who he is. I was so moved by this thought you shared that before God created, the earth was really inhabitable by us because we're land dwellers. So there's this intentionality from God to give us exactly what we need in creation, which I hadn't thought about that before. That's such a cool thought. And one of the things I think is huge about hospitality is how do you anticipate people's needs? Like when Rustin came over to your house, you began to think, how do I anticipate what will his needs be in this moment? And God does that in creation. So talk a little bit about like just the importance of hospitality in anticipating needs.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like we talked about, we think to be good at hospitality, you have to be like a gourmet chef, or you have to be perfectly, like have a great eye for decor. But in the moments that you felt most comfortable in your life when you've been invited into someone's home, it's probably like because they've just been really thoughtful. Like they've, when you go on a cruise, they make like the little animals out of the towels, right? And that's like the least cool thing about a cruise, probably, like the unlimited food and all of the exotic locations. But when I talk to people about going on cruises, they always show me a picture of the animal towels, right? It's like, oh, wow, you paid a lot of money for that. I probably could have figured out how to make that for you. But yeah, because it's just the little simple things. My kids and I just went to Disney World a few weeks ago, and there's this level of anticipation for like the little tiny things that you're gonna love. My mom and I have a joke about when we went to Disney World, the thing that I talked about the most was like the little stuffed animal on my pillow in the room, you know, that you definitely paid for and was not free, right? But for me, I felt like, oh, I'm a kid. Someone's thought about me and has put just this little character on my pillow. And I've never forgotten that. You know, it was when I was 5 years old. But I think about it in the church too, you know, how we're trying to model God's initiative, like God taking that first move to create a space for us. And so as we are in the church and we're inviting people to experience relationship with Jesus, how do we think about what they need when they walk through the door?
Yeah.
Like, what do they need in order to feel comfortable, to feel welcome so that they can hear the gospel?
Yeah, exactly. At my house growing up, I always thought it was kind of cool because we had friends over so often and people over so often that we didn't actually get up to answer the door. We just told people knock and then come in. And so we'd have people come over. They would walk through our house and nobody was there because they're just kind of used to knocking and coming in. And I would often say things like, make yourself at home, like if you need something to drink. And I'd kind of think that's hospitality, like welcoming, opening your doors, make yourself at home.
Yeah.
But really, that's not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about like paying attention, like getting up to get the door and say, I'm glad you're here, welcoming them in, anticipating their needs, not make yourself at home, but how can I make you feel like you're at home.
Absolutely. I think the most powerful thing about this Genesis story is that God did not have to create, but he did. He's sitting there
Yeah.
in before all things, almighty, all powerful, and God decided to make the first move, to like initiate this whole thing so that we could be a part of the story that he is writing. And I think about that all the time in the church, because we're basically trying to model that for people. Like
Yeah.
we are showing up first. We want to make the first move because we believe that what can happen here can change your whole trajectory. We joke on the greeter team sometimes about how like no one, unless you're a greeter, no one touches a door handle, right? Like because that's kind of like making the first move, right? Oh, I see you there. You're not grabbing the door handle. I'm grabbing the door for you. Like I see you there. It's like
Yeah.
a really small thing, but I think it communicates this like massive theological truth.
Yeah, it does. So the question then becomes, if this is so obvious, like we're making it sound, why are we so resistant to it? Like what's the thing that keeps us back, not only from what we're talking about here at church, but just personally being a more hospitable people? Like what gets in the way, you think?
Oh man, I think one of them is just like fear. I think that's the biggest thing that comes up for me.
Yeah.
I think about when I moved here, and I confessed this to all of you multiple times, but it took me like 8 months to meet my neighbors, which is crazy, right? Like I'm a pastor, I'm moving in the neighborhood, and I'm not like introducing myself, but I would say hi, and I did introduce myself, but I didn't like invite anyone into our space for a long time because we were renovating and we were like trying to get settled, and we had like boxes everywhere. My kids were really little, so they were even more levels of running around crazy than you guys see them on Sunday morning nowadays. And I just thought, okay, I have to make a good first impression with the neighbors. And so it took me this really long time before I invited them in. I was thinking this past weekend, my daughter's friend came to support her. Our neighbor came, asked if she could come support her at her gymnastics tournament. She came and watched her for like 3 hours, sat and watched this long thing and cheered her on. And honestly, we had this whole group of people there supporting her. And after the gymnastics tournament, my daughter was like, what did Kennedy think? You know, and this is our neighbor across the street. They're best friends now. And I delayed that relationship probably by like 8 months to a year because I was self-conscious about, the things that we associate with hospitality that really are not at the heart of it, right?
Yeah, good. And I think I do that as well. Like my own resistance is often just valuing things over people, or having it together, like image over people, even some, like trying to control that image, where if you can kind of make an adjustment and say, no, relationship is worth whatever it costs, if that's like image protection or if that's actual thing protection, I don't know. So that makes sense to me that you kind of have to jump that hurdle to get to a place where you're creating hospitable environments.
And I think too, it's not just about your house, right? Because I think I get hung up on this too. Like, oh, I need to host more. I need to have more people. My dad built me this beautiful farm table from scratch, and I need to be filling up with people every night for dinner. But I think sometimes hospitality is a posture of our hearts too. Like how we're making our way in the world. Like, are you waking up in the morning, like headed to point A to point B on a schedule, frustrated or hurried or frazzled? Or when you walk into a room, is your heart opening up? Like, I could extend myself towards someone in relationship, or at least be open to a conversation, or I'm going to notice someone and what's going on. Like, even if it's just noticing their temperament or asking a question. So
yeah, I love that. Just being available for a relationship. And how often, if you're like me, you've got a to-do list, and relationship kind of gets in the way sometimes on that to-do list. So maybe I should write hospitality at the top of my to-do list.
Yes, that's right.
So in your sermon, you ask, what's right in front of you that you can offer up in a posture of welcome to others? And how can we arrange our time, resources, home, church, our hearts to mirror hospitality of God, who shaped the universe with this in mind? How would you answer your own question?
Oh man, I think if I could answer that question in a really personal way, I think with hospitality and what you're talking about with relationship being the most important thing, I think that I have my life a little bit too full in some ways. Like my life is kind of like I was talking about before, all that stuff in Dean's room laying around. And so it's like, how are we going to host anyone in here? We can't even like walk without having a tripping hazard. I think if our lives are like chock full, like scheduled minute by minute, or maybe full of just like your own interest or my own agenda or my own ways that I want to build my own kingdom, right? I don't even have space in my own personal world to invite someone else in. It's something I hear all the time with people when we're talking about the church, because my big thing about church is like, you're going to find your people, you're going to find your community, like, and this is real for me. My community of people that has got me through the hardest times of my life has always been in the church, has been my best friends on the mountaintops. But people say, I don't have time for another friend. Have you heard this before? Maybe we've said it, right? I don't have time for another friend. I don't have time for my current friends. Like, it's been like 10 years since I've had lunch with whoever. But I think this is a symptom of like how our society works. And I am you guys know, I keep a quick pace. Like, this is a confessional moment. And so what I've been thinking about in the new year is I think Jim Clark, he might not like that I put him on the spot right now. Sorry, Jim, I didn't run this by him. But I was talking to Jim a few weeks ago, and we had a chance to have this long conversation. I don't know if it was at like a funeral lunch or like at somewhere where we weren't in the church. And it was so nice. And I was like, Jim, I've loved talking to you today. This is great. I think this is the longest conversation we've ever had. And Jim said to me, yeah, on Sundays, it's hard to talk to you for very long sometimes. I'm worried you're busy or you're running from one thing to the next. And I was just like, oh, shots to the heart, Jim. But it's true, though. That was like such a kind thing for you to say to me, because truly my heart is to be connected in a relationship. But my activity and even my body language is like, I'm on the move. Like, so I think that's mine.
Yeah.
That was a tough question.
Yeah. No, I think that's really challenging, just the idea of carving out space. And I think we get in these spots where the agenda doesn't include like relationship and hospitality. And I think about even like foster care support night here at the church. This is a ministry where we just welcome foster care families. We're actually not driving the training, the agenda. We just show up to hang out with the kids and love on the families. And sometimes we get questions here at the church. Well, how many people have started coming to the church since you started doing that? Or how many salvations have you had in foster care support night? And of course, we would love for them to come to the church. We would love for them to give their life to Jesus if they haven't. But really, the agenda is hospitality. Yeah. It's creating this space where they feel seen and loved and welcomed, and relationship is built. And that's happened in really beautiful ways. I think about just a few weeks ago, Juan and Maria and their son Jesus showed up on the doorstep of Christmas week. Anybody busy on Christmas week? Anyone? It's like, okay, they needed a space, literally. They needed a space. And this church showed up in really cool ways and blessed this family in a hospitable moment, giving them space, seeing them, recognizing them. We didn't even speak their language, but we embraced them. And that's that kind of hospitable approach to the ministry of the church that I think we need more of.
Yes, and it did take time. It took time and Google Translate and a lot of like cooperation and yeah, that was a beautiful moment and a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to say personally, since you've been here, you've taught me so much about hospitality. You really have. And I'm still learning. Like, if any of you are out there thinking this doesn't come natural for me, you can get in line behind me, okay? Because I'm the president of that club. And you really have taught me so much about the value of hospitality and doing it well. So thank you for sharing from the word today and kind of kicking us off. And thanks for modeling for us
what it looks like to be
hospitable. Can you say thank you to Pastor Bethany?